2 days to go. The final show here in England before flying off to Madrid. But you will have a show tomorrow morning, of course, pre-recorded and ready for your listening pleasure with a fantastic guest. But there is things to focus on ahead of that game. The weekend's action saw not just drama in Spain, but also in England as we look ahead to what is the biggest game of the season. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you this morning and every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much always for tuning in. Very much appreciate you being here. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Black Shine, Paul, Knowledge, Carlton, Tom, Shari, Jose, Matt, G, NSW. We've got Natty, we've got Angela, we've got Brian, we've got Damien, Paul, Fuda, we've got Grantley Poos and Stevie and Tom and Amaka. Good morning to you all and everybody else joining us in the chat box as well. You're all very much appreciated. I hope you've had a very good weekend. I hope it treated you well. I hope that indeed you got everything done you needed to. You got your kind of mind off football maybe a bit yesterday. Maybe you watched a little bit of golf. Absolutely massive congratulations to Rory McIlroy on winning the Masters and, of course, the Grand Slam as well. It was not something I expected to keep me up until the early hours of the morning. I thought it was going to get done by at least midnight, but Rory wanted to keep the nerves going. And certainly it was a nervous end to the day. But what an achievement. What a golfer. Absolutely fantastic achievement by Rory McIlroy, and fair play to him. And commiserations to Justin Rose, who obviously produced one of the best Masters comebacks of all time and sadly just fell short. Would have been an amazing achievement if he'd have won it off the back of being so far behind the lead. But 10 birdies at Augusta. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, for those that have no interest in golf, you'll be glad that's probably the last time I'll mention it. But let's jump forward, shall we, to today's stories. And we begin with Sunday's Premier League action. And it was, I don't know why I've got these halftime scores. That's weird. I got so enamored by seeing Chelsea losing those results at halftime. That they're not the full-time scores. How funny is that? You think that I would have clicked or checked or realised that they weren't the full-time scores, wouldn't you? Let's remedy that quickly, shall we? I think we probably should. Otherwise, it would just look strange on the screen. I can keep it up as being, 2-0 to Ipswich. That'd be great. But we all know that ultimately that was not the score on the day. So let me just flip over and get that back on the screen. There we go. So, yeah, these are the full-time scores from Sunday's games. Chelsea 2, Ipswich 2, Liverpool 2, West Ham United 1, Wolves 4, Spurs wished it was 2. Wolves 4, Tottenham 2, Newcastle 4, Manchester United 1. This idea that Man United may well not win another game between now and the end of the season, it's very much on, this idea. And the table is something quite special to just witness. Wolves are on great form. They've won their last 4 games. They now find themselves on 35 points. They could put Tottenham down onto 37 points. If only the bottom 3 were better this season, who knows where Man United and Spurs might be. But currently, as things stand, in terms of the gap to European qualification, 7th place Aston Villa on 54 points. Man United down in 14th. 16 points away with 6 games to play. European football through qualification is nigh on impossible for all of those teams. In fact, I think it already is impossible. And now everything rests for them, of course, on the Europa League. Both teams could still, of course, qualify if either of them win the competition. But there is still some very, very good teams left in that competition as well. Athletic Club, of course, as we know, are still very much in the fold of things. Lyon could yet get a result at Man United. Frankfurt could, of course, knock Spurs out in Germany. And Athletic Club, we hope, for me anyway, I'm hoping Athletic Club are the team that managed to lift the trophy. But yeah, what a result for Wolves. And Ipswich as well. That leaves Chelsea sitting in 6th place. We talked about the scores on the doors the other day. I had a comment on the show the other day. Someone said, why are you talking about Manchester United? It's an Arsenal show. I have just one word answer to that. funny. It's just funny. It's funny. It's quite enjoyable talking about these clubs and seeing where they're falling, seeing what's happening to their seasons. Who dealt with, they've had their issues, but my goodness me, they've not had as issues as bad as Arsenal this season. And just look at the gap between the two sides, the four sides. Gap between Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, and Spurs is significant. What a place to be to witness kind of the fall of these teams. And if Chelsea do not finish inside the top 5, maybe not even inside the top 7. Oh, goodness gracious me. What does that say about that club before the end of this season? I sincerely hope that they do fall out. It would be hilarious for that to happen. Anyway, let's move into specifically Arsenal news. Fabio Vieira earned player of the match in Porto's most recent victory. He's having a decent season, is Fabio Vieira. They won 1-0 on Saturday against Casapia. And Fabio Vieira was heavily involved in their victory and won indeed the player of the match for that fixture. As I said, he's having a decent campaign, is Fabio Vieira, and hopefully he can come back in the summer and earn Arsenal a fair bit of money if a club comes in to try and buy him from the Gunners. That, of course, is the hope. I can't see a future necessarily for him at Arsenal, and so I think it's all going to be about him being sold and moved on in the future. But good signs from Portugal. Meanwhile, Ryan Taylor at the Express has been writing up some of his insights on Arsenal's transfer situation, on a number of players. We're going to focus on 2 of those from the story. The first one, of course, is Joan Garcia, the Espanyol keeper, who may have fallen down the pecking order for Andrea Berta. We know that Arsenal had been very keen on the Spanish goalkeeper and that a lot of work had been done behind the scenes. However, Ryan's information is that Andrea Berta has not had any communication whatsoever with Joan Garcia or indeed his representatives to this point. And it may be an indication that instead he views other goalkeepers as the more realistic target as a number 2. I've been of the position that I thought Joan Garcia would be an excellent number 2, and he certainly would be. However, there is an argument that 25, if that is indeed what it would cost, million euros to sign a backup goalkeeper is quite a lot of money, and that maybe that money should be used elsewhere, and Arsenal should look to be a little bit more financially restrictive with how they spend on number 2 goalkeeper. And I understand that argument if indeed the money can be put elsewhere. If Arsenal do really well in the Champions League, maybe they can spend money anyway on that player, on that position. But at the moment, according to Ryan, interest in Joan Garcia may have dipped as Andrea Berta assesses potentially alternatives. Continuing in that report, of which you can read on the Express website, of course, Jorrel Hato, a player whose name that we know has been heavily linked with Arsenal over the last 18 to 24 months or so. Ryan suggests that, of course, that Arsenal's interest in the player has continued and will continue into the summer. We know that a defender may indeed be on the cards if the likes of Kivior and Zinchenko, and we know that Tierney is leaving, or indeed do leave in the summer. They would need, I think, to bring in some depth, and especially on that left-hand side. And Jorrel Hato has been arguably the best young defender other than Miles Lewis-Skelly on that left-hand side this season. He has been absolutely brilliant. Fran Garcia at Real Madrid, you could argue, is also maybe among those being talked about also. But certainly Jorrel Hato is very, very highly rated. And Fran Garcia is like 25, to be fair. But kind of a new kind of figure on the board, if you like. But certainly in terms of genuinely, sub 20-year-old players, Jorrel Hato and Miles Lewis-Skelly are up there, certainly. And lastly, the big story of yesterday was in the game between Real Madrid and Deportivo Alaves. Because in that game, which saw Real Madrid take a 1-0 lead through the already sent off in the game against Arsenal, Eduardo Camavinga, just a few minutes after Real Madrid took the lead, Kylian Mbappe was sent off for a horrendous challenge. If you've not yet watched the video, it's not exactly, the picture isn't exactly comfortable to watch at all. But it is horrendous what the challenge was. Blanco is lucky that he didn't injure himself more seriously than what we've witnessed there. But Mbappe's emotions clearly running high enough, and to put in what is an amazingly horrific challenge. Are Real Madrid's nerves, are Real Madrid's emotions exceptionally high at the moment? You can imagine that, yes, they certainly would be. But in this case in point, goodness me, it is an awful challenge. It doesn't mean he's suspended for the game against Arsenal. For those of you that were hoping that maybe a red card here meant that a suspension, I know that suspension news has been very difficult to understand over the last week or so. But no, he will indeed be available to play against Arsenal in the Champions League on Wednesday. He'll be suspended for their upcoming La Liga matches. But Kylian Mbappe sent off after seeing red in more than one way in their 1-0 win over Deportivo Alaves. What that means, of course, for the La Liga table is that Real Madrid still very much in things. The weekend saw Barcelona just narrowly themselves beat Leganes. It was very tight, 2 tight wins for the 2 top teams in La Liga. Atletico Madrid playing today. Athletic Club getting back to winning ways themselves with a 3-1 win that puts them back into very much strong position of 4th in the table. Yeah, that is Real Madrid. That is Arsenal. That is the last that we'll probably be discussing of things until we've heard from Mikel Arteta on Tuesday afternoon. You'll be getting a show tomorrow morning with myself and a guest, as I will be away at the airport ready to fly to Madrid. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions then, right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of today's show, which means that we're tackling some of your questions. If you've got questions you'd like to see answered, please put a capital Q into the chat box, and I'll do my absolute best and hardest to answer as many of them as possible over the next 15 minutes or so. Let's just say some more hellos before we do jump into the chat and say good morning. We've got Kirill in the chat, Nishan, we've got Ade Damola, we've got Tiger and Gooner, we've got Kahindi in the chat. Jamsey as well, who says, interestingly, Mbappe's challenge wasn't too far gone for the one that Martinelli received, just a sideways angle as opposed to the form of being behind. I think the tackle from Norgard is, it's not, I don't think it's as bad as Mbappe's, because Mbappe's is like, you can say it's like angry, it's studs down on the leg, whereas it's a scissor action from Norgard. But both of them, in my opinion, are red card challenges. Without question, for me, they are both red card worthy tackles. I would want to see red cards brandished for both. They are awful, absolutely awful. Paul says the on-field decision was mystifyingly given as a yellow for that challenge and was overturned by VAR. I don't know, in those moments, these are the type of tackles where you think, I can see why a yellow was given, because you don't necessarily know the angle or what the referee's seen. They only get one look at that in real time to make a call, and they know they've got VAR. So they know that's there. My issue with VAR is when referees choose to do that is when it's for things like penalties. Because for penalties, I think the threshold to give a penalty on the field should be lower, and the threshold for VAR, therefore, to overturn it should also be more amenable. Because at the moment, what's happening, I feel, in football is that referees are not giving decisions on the field. They're not giving those kind of calls because they have VAR, but then VAR's threshold to get involved is too high. So the penalties that should be given end up not being given. Nick says, saw an article that Arsenal are now favourites for the Champions League. Would you agree? No, I wouldn't. I think Barcelona are certainly the favourites for me at this moment in time. Grantley Poo says, have you got your question ready for the press conference yet? I've got till tomorrow evening, in fact, to get ready for that. So no, not quite yet. Not 100% on what I'm going to ask just yet. We'll hear from Mikel Arteta and another player, of course, with it being a European game. Kwame says, Tom, how many players do you think we will sign this summer? It's the magic question. I hope at least 5 or 6. At least 5 or 6, I'm hoping for. NSW says, Tom, are you going to take a load of pictures and videos at the stadium when you get to Madrid and post them on the Discord server? I'll do my best. I mean, I definitely will be taking pictures and videos, and I imagine they'll eventually get some postings, so you can be sure that will happen. Jay Varron says, if we got to the semi-final and Havertz was fit, would you start ahead of Moreno? No, I wouldn't. I don't think he will be fit for the semi-finals. I think the only chance he's got of being fit is maybe for the final, not the semi-final. But no, I think Merino has earned that centre-forward spot. His record is very, very good. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't carry on using Merino at the moment. 6 goals in 9 games at centre-forward. Knowledge says, Tom, you mentioned the golf, but what about the F1? That was a pretty damn good race. It did get more exciting, didn't it, before the end? And again, congratulations to Piastri, who kind of handled the whole pressure and the safety car and all of it very, very well. Russell as well, Norris as well, getting back into that top 3 was important for him. But overall, a decent race, one of the better ones of the season so far. What about the Mbappe celebration? What about the Mbappe celebration? Is this a story? Can't say I've heard it. Mbappe celebration. Anything on this? Any news about the Mbappe celebration? If you're talking about the one against Atletico Madrid, they were all cleared of that. I mean, not clear, they were fined, but they weren't given any bans off the back of those celebrations against Atletico. Tiger and Gooner says, Tom, I'm coming over to the UK Wednesday from Perth, Australia. Hopefully I'll get to bump into you again like a few years ago outside the army, mate. On Wednesday morning, I'll be in Madrid, mate. I'll be in Madrid, so it's been pretty impressive if we did manage to do that. Raf says, do you think that we need to win before we are given the big club bias with referees? Seems this year we have not got the benefit. I don't know. I think Arsenal in general are just looked at, refereed, officiated differently, unfortunately. That's just how it feels as an Arsenal supporter. That's how it comes across, in my honest opinion. That's how it feels to me. Kwame says, TC, when are you coming to do your stand-up? I mean, certainly never. Never is the answer, mate. Never is the answer to that question. Willow says, would you recommend Ramsdale to Man United? Ramsdale is a good goalkeeper. And I know that there's this stigma around relegations, and being attached to clubs that go down. The reason why that happens is because he is a good goalkeeper, and clubs down there recognise that they need somebody that's a good shot stopper and faces a lot of pressure. Unfortunately, and we know that when he's in a good team, as he was with that Arsenal side, he can do fantastically well. He made the wrong decision to move to Southampton. It was a panic move. It meant that he played a season for the worst team, one of the worst teams in Premier League history. And unfortunately, that leaves him and his stock particularly low. But there has been reports that West Ham are said to be interested in signing him. Arsenal do have a sell-on clause. I'm unaware of how specific that sell-on clause is or how strong that sell-on clause is. But Arsenal do have a sell-on clause in that deal for Ramsdale, to my understanding. But let's wait and see what happens with him in the summer. Samuel says, hot take for you, Tom. Zubimendi arrives in the summer and doesn't bang. After Christmas, our main striker gets injured and Zubimendi is played up top, producing goal-scoring numbers that we couldn't imagine. Imagine that. Imagine Zubimendi becomes a centre-forward. I can't see that happening. I mean, in terms of his comparison to Merino, he's nowhere near it like good as Merino is in the opposition box. That is far from his forte. So I think if that was to happen, an injury to our centre-forward that Havertz, of course, and Merino, I think, would take point rather than Zubi. Tizer says, I think that we all have to agree that Partey should get a contract extension to allow Zubimendi. I mean, we don't have to agree, Tizer, and I don't agree. I'm not offering Partey another contract. I think this is the right time for Partey's time at Arsenal to come to a close, and I stand by that. I always find it odd when people start their opinion with, I think it's time that we all have to agree. A little entitled. Not going to lie. A little entitled. We don't have to agree. We can all have different opinions on this. And I personally don't agree with that at all. Chris says, Tom, who do you think we could sign as a number 2 if we don't go for Joan Garcia? It's a magic question, Chris, isn't it? And my knowledge of goalkeepers and backup keepers and older goalkeepers, I have to say, is not exactly amazing. I'd be happy getting an older goalkeeper in to be our number 2 again. It's not something necessarily I'm too concerned by, the number 2 goalkeeper position. You look at Stefan Ortega at Manchester City. That was an absolutely, masterminded piece of business. An older goalkeeper, in his prime years, happy to join the club. I personally think that a deal like that for an unknown who is just better than we ever could think of is certainly something that is the pathway Arsenal could look down. Martin says, the problem with VAR is, 1, it's administered by the PGMOL, and 2, Scrap the clear and obvious and replace it with get the correct decision. Kwame says, I agree with you, TC. Barcelona are favourites for the Champions League, but I hope that we can produce a miracle. Paul, who's been a member with us now for 40 months, says, question, Charles Watts is attending the Real Madrid game. Should we worry? Yes. Yes, we should. We should be worrying a lot. And if we do indeed somehow manage to mess this up and be eliminated from the Champions League, I think someone needs to have a word with Mr. Watts about his attendance at games, quite frankly, because it's I think it's too risky for him to be there. Personally, I think it's too risky. He wasn't there for the first leg, and we win 3-0 comfortably. One of the best performances that we will ever see without Mr. Watts in attendance. And me in row 4 of the press box, which I'm never in row 4. I was sitting with Harry in the broadcasting section. It was great. I loved it. And I suggested to those behind the scenes that as a good omen, I should probably be sat there forthwith. But I was back in row 2 for the game against for the game at the weekend, and we drew. So, there you go. If I'm in row 2, bad things are happening, apparently. So I need to be sat in row 4, in my opinion. But there you go. But yeah, Mr. Watts, I don't know how I feel about him going out there. I really don't know how I feel about this. It's risky. It's very, very risky indeed. Vishal says, do you think that we'd need 2 midfielders if Partey and Jorginho leave? Do you think that we need to move Miles Lewis-Skelly into midfield? This is a really important question. It's about, do we have, if Partey and Jorginho both leave, do we have enough depth just with Zubimendi? I think yes, because we have Declan Rice and Marino and Dowman coming through. And I would personally add an attacking midfielder that can play 8 as well to the role. So that if Zubi was out, you could play Rice, Odegaard, and that midfielder. But I don't think it necessarily has to be a defensive midfielder that we buy because we have Rice. Damien says, I don't understand people's blindness over Partey. These people will want Tomiyasu to be given a new contract too. Tyler says, if you don't agree, do you think a midfield of Rice, Marino, Zubimendi is good enough for a whole season? As I just mentioned there, I think we need to go and add a number 8, an attacking-minded midfielder, because Rice and Zubi, I think, are good enough to be our 6s going forwards for the next season. And then, of course, we'll have another midfielder on top of that also. Nick says, I remember when Tom was the bad luck charm. Now he's more than happy to put that juju on Charles. Yeah, as long as I don't have it. I'm more than happy. I don't need to be the saboteur like Charles is now. Jasper says, how much longer can we keep rotating until we end up in a fight for Champions League spots? I think we'll be fine, Jasper. Capri says, does Charles Watts have bad? I mean, I don't know if it's necessary that he has bad luck. It's that our luck is, I think, better when Charles isn't there. It's probably the way I would word it. Would it not? I think we're just going off evidence at the moment that we've got given to us. Mick says, Martin Harvey, £68 return flight. Easy. Martin says, it's a standing joke. I reckon in Europe away games that Charles has attended is absolutely horrendous. I mean, it's true. Kwame says, Charles Watts, is he a conspirator? Oh, I'm starting to feel bad for Charlie now. I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, I don't want to go anywhere near him. I'm not going to shake. I don't want to shake his hand, or I remember there was a day in the press box. I was sitting there minding my own business. All of a sudden, a program gets hit over the back of my head. I don't know if we won that day, but I lost a few memories, and I won't tell you who did it, but I'll leave it up to your imagination. Mick says, do you think Liverpool will beat West Ham tonight? That was yesterday. And they did. So, Mick, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Liverpool will win that game because they already have. Tyler says, I thought Arteta saw Rice more as an 8 now going forward. Shouldn't we be looking for another 6? It doesn't mean because he sees him as an 8 that he can't play 6, though, does it? Like, if he can play 6, he can. He is the 6, but ultimately, if Zubimendi's going to be starting week in, week out at 6, should we sign him? If for whatever reason Zubimendi can't play, we've got Rice to be able to play there. Or Lewis-Skelly, of course, can play at DM as well. We've got other players coming through. It may be that we sign somebody, but from my perspective, none of that changes how I feel about the idea of giving Partey an extension. I'm just personally not happy to do that. And I think it's too risky of a decision for Arsenal to take, personally. Amiral Gunner says, Tom, who is the FC that is Charles Watts? Isn't he a Stones drummer? Where is this coming from? Paul says Charles Watts has admitted himself. This is becoming the Charles Watts talk. This morning. Goodness, all this free publicity I'm giving to Charles. He doesn't need it, but he's getting it. Charles has admitted it himself, so show no concern for him being offended. Oh, I'm not concerned about Charles being offended. I'm not concerned about that in the slightest. Mick says, what phase is Arne Slot in? I don't know. He's been very, very lucky, whatever phase he's in. Peter says, rumour has it Charles turned up at half-time when we were 4-0 up at Newcastle. I've heard that rumour as well. It's pretty well established, isn't it? I think that rumour. Charles was there. I think he was there at the 8-2. I think he was there for the 8-2. I think he was there in 2006. I think he was there at Galatasaray. I think he was there for Real Zaragoza as well. Rumour has it Charles was at all of those games. Pretty sure he was in attendance for every single one of them. Steve says, have you heard about Vinay Venkatesham joining Spurs? Of course, we've talked about it quite significantly. Carl says, how about a Partey poll? Keep for one seat. No, I'm very, very staunch on this, where I'm at with this one. I don't need to do a poll. I know that it's a very split on this. I know that it's very split, but I'm very, very happy with where I'm at with my opinion on this, and I don't see it changing. Sub says, I feel the change of formation from 4-3-3 to 4-2-3-1 next season allows Odegaard to be more unpredictable in the centre rather than a right-sided type player, also allowing Rice to be the right 8 as well. I don't know is the honest answer. I don't know whether or not the 10 role is ever something that we use again under Arteta. The 4-3-3 seems to be something we're very married with. It's the formation that has seen us progress to where we are as a club and to get us into the title conversations again. So I don't see how it's going to change. It may be, of course, that Odegaard's minutes are affected next season if his time on the field does not improve his form, and that we may see Kai Havertz get more of an opportunity playing as kind of a second striker. That may be something that happens. But I don't see us using a 10. I just don't see it in Arteta's makeup to use a 10 at this point in time at all. And let's go to Zamir says, thoughts on Hato? Would absolutely love Hato as a signing. I think it would be an excellent addition for Arsenal to make. Ty says, we have our main transfer targets, which keep getting spoken about, but what would you be the alternatives at striker, midfield, winger and defence? I mean, for striker, I think, Sesko, Gyökeres, there's a couple of options that we've got. They're the alternatives. In midfield, Zubimendi. If we aren't to sign Zubimendi, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe someone like Carlos Baleba at Brighton would be a good opportunity to sign someone like that. In the wide position, if we can't get Williams, I'd go all out for Barcola. I'm not 100% convinced that Semenyo would be the right pick. I'd rather go for a high caliber player, I think. Anthony Gordon, you could try and test Newcastle resolve there maybe for Gordon. He seems like the player that maybe would force a move. But and in defence, of course, you've got the likes of Jorrel Hato, but I think you've got to look at Dean Huijsen as well as a very, very good player that could indeed be moving this summer and bring in some depth and competition. But he could also start somewhere else, and that might give other clubs more of an opportunity to get him through the door. Alex says, Tom, what are your thoughts on Spurs' project and returning to the top 6? I feel their season has been so catastrophic that it will prompt a response from the club in investment and structure. Obviously, they've just brought in Vinay Venkatesham, and I really don't know whether or not we're going to see an improvement off the back of that. It's certainly seen as a significant kind of get by Spurs to get Vinay through the door, but will things improve? That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Let's go to Suleiman, who says, Tom, do you think Real Madrid are afraid of Arsenal, especially after what happened at the Emirates? Oh, without question, they're going to be nervous. They'll be motivated. They will be emboldened and encouraged by the idea that they really have nothing to lose necessarily. All the pressure is on Arsenal here to get the result, to hold on. Arsenal are in this state of... The job for Real Madrid is very simple. Their job is very, very simple. For Arsenal, it is not. Because for Arsenal, they've got decisions to make. Real Madrid have no decisions to make. They just have to attack. Attack, score as many as they can. For Arsenal, they have to decide between trying to play a game, trying to win a game, or trying to hold on. And if you decide to hold on, in those scenarios, you can leave yourself rather vulnerable. If all of a sudden you concede early and your plan has been to hold on, that can unsettle you quite quickly. I think Arsenal need to approach the game in as smart a way as possible. I don't think it's just about holding on for 90 minutes. I think we need to be clever. I think we have to try and score. I think if Arsenal score, we go through. But if we don't score, there's still percentage chances, a very decent percentage chance that Real Madrid can score 3 goals. We haven't conceded 3 goals all season, I don't think. I'm trying to think of a game where we have conceded 3 goals, and I'm struggling this season. Maybe in the chat box will be able to tell me. But Real Madrid haven't scored many in big games so far this campaign. They've never scored against Arsenal in their entire history competitively. And all of the omens sit in Arsenal's favour, but it means nothing because it's Real Madrid and it's the Bernabeu, and anything in that stadium can happen. So, yeah, let's wait and see what happens. But I'm very excited. I can't wait to see what is in store for us. I can't wait to see how we deal with the pressure, the atmosphere. The roof's going to be closed. The noise in there is going to be electric. And it will be the highlight of my short career in this space so far, and I can't wait. I will be back with you tomorrow morning with a special guest to talk about the game, to talk about our feelings with it, to talk about just so much to do with this monumental fixture that we have got ahead of ourselves. So join me 8 a.m. tomorrow for that episode, while indeed I in reality will be flying, of course, to the Spanish capital for a wonderful, we hope, few days of football. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.